Have you ever felt like someone was watching you in the woods? What if they never moved, but every day they got closer? This is the story of a hiker who never made it out. Stay with me until the end and don't look away. I had always loved hiking alone. There was something deeply satisfying about being miles away from civilization, surrounded only by the quiet vastness of the wilderness. It was solitude in its purest form, a rare escape from the noise of everyday life. This time, I had chosen a stretch of remote forest deep in the Pacific Northwest, a place I had read about in an old travel guide. The trail was marked but rarely used, winding through thick pines and mist-shrouded valleys. Exactly what I needed. The first day passed uneventfully. I set up camp by a small clearing just before dusk, boiled some water, and ate in silence, savoring the stillness. It was eerily quiet. No rustling leaves, no distant hoots of owls. Just silence. I told myself it was nothing. Some forests were just like that. The morning mist was thick when I set out again, curling low between the trees. The path ahead was barely visible, swallowed by the gray haze. Then, I saw it. A figure, standing motionless in the fog, just off the trail. I froze. My first thought was that it was another hiker, though I hadn't seen anyone else since entering the forest. I squinted, trying to make out the details. The shape was human, tall, but featureless in the mist. I hesitated before calling out, "Hey, you lost." No response. The figure didn't move. It just stood there. A trick of the light, I told myself. A burned-out tree stump, or maybe a weirdly shaped branch. I forced a chuckle, shook my head, and kept walking. By midday, I had almost forgotten about it. That night, I camped in a small ravine, setting up my tent beneath the arching roots of an old oak. As I lay inside, wrapped in my sleeping bag, I couldn't shake a strange feeling, like something was watching me from the darkness beyond the fire's glow. I forced myself to sleep. When I stepped out of my tent the next morning, the first thing I saw was the footprints. They weren't mine. A thin trail of indentations in the damp earth circled my tent. Slow, deliberate steps. As if someone had been walking around me while I slept. I scanned the trees, heart pounding, and then I saw them. Not one, not 2.5 figures, standing in the mist beyond the clearing, motionless, facing me. They weren't there the night before. I was sure of it. A deep, primal dread settled into my gut. I had no explanation for this. No logical reason why those shapes, tall, dark, and utterly still, were there. I packed up fast, barely stopping to eat. I needed to get out of here. But when I checked my map and compass, something was wrong. The trail I had marked to exit the forest, it wasn't there anymore. I tried to stay calm. I told myself I had just misread the map, that maybe I had taken a wrong turn the day before. But the deeper I looked into the trees, the more uneasy I became. The watchers, because that's what they were now, figures that simply watched, hadn't moved. Not while I was looking, but they were closer. The 5 of them stood in an uneven line just beyond the mist, their forms barely visible through the shifting gray. They had no defining features, no clothing, no faces, just dark silhouettes, human-shaped but wrong. I swallowed hard, gripping my backpack straps as I forced myself to turn away. I would not let my imagination get the better of me. I needed to move. I walked fast, sticking to the path I had marked when I first entered the forest. Every few minutes, I glanced over my shoulder. The watchers remained behind, distant but ever-present, standing between the trees. Then I saw the footprints again. They weren't mine. A second trail of steps ran parallel to my own, just a few feet away. Like someone, or something, had been walking alongside me this whole time. And then I heard it. A sound so faint, I almost missed it. A whisper. Indistinct, distant, like wind filtering through dead leaves. But the forest was still. There was no wind. I stopped. Listened. Silence. Then, a soft rustling behind me. I spun around. The figures had moved. They were closer now, standing in the open where I had just passed. I hadn't heard them move. A fresh wave of panic surged through me. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to stay in control. If I ran blindly, I could get lost and I had to get out of here. I hiked nonstop until dusk, stopping only when my legs ached from exhaustion. I found a clearing with a slight incline. Good visibility, less chance of surprises. I set up camp quickly, then built a fire. Even though I was running low on fuel, somewhere in the back of my mind, a terrible thought was forming. What if they get closer at night? I didn't want to find out. I stayed awake as long as I could, staring into the darkness beyond the firelight. But exhaustion crept in, and eventually, I slept. I woke up gasping. The fire had burned down to embers, and the footprints were inside my camp, not just circling my tent. They were everywhere, leading up to my gear, my backpack, my boots. The worst part, they led up to me. Someone, or something, had been standing over me while I slept. My breath hitched. My hands trembled as I reached for my flashlight and flicked it on. Beyond the dim glow, just at the tree line, stood the watchers, closer than ever. I didn't pack. I didn't eat. I just ran. The fire's last embers barely flickered as I left the clearing behind, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The watchers stood motionless at the tree line, but I wasn't going to wait and see if they'd moved. I had to get out. I checked my map again. I had marked my entry point when I first arrived. There was a clear route back to the road. A 3-day hike, maybe 2 if I pushed hard. I forced myself to focus. Follow the compass. Follow the markers. Keep moving. But as the hours passed, something was wrong. I recognized the trees around me. The same twisted oak with its broken limb. The same boulder covered in moss. I had been here before. I was walking in circles. I checked my compass. The needle spun lazily before settling, pointing west. West was the direction I had come from. I turned east. Took 5 steps. Checked the compass again. West. I spun it in my hands, tapped the glass. Still west. No matter where I turned, the needle always pointed deeper into the woods. Panic crawled up my spine. I wasn't lost. The forest itself wouldn't let me leave, and the worst part, the watchers were still there. I caught glimpses of them between the trees, always at the edge of my vision. Silent, waiting, getting closer. I had no choice but to stop. Dusk fell fast in the deep woods, swallowing the last light of day. I found a small rise, cleared a patch of ground, and forced myself to go through the motions of setting up camp. My hands shook as I built a fire. I knew I wouldn't sleep. Instead, I sat with my back against a tree, facing the blackness beyond the flickering flames. I could feel them, just outside the fire's reach, watching. The night stretched long and silent, broken only by the sound of my own breath. Then a whisper, soft. Just behind me. I spun, but there was nothing. Just empty trees. Then I realized the firelight had dimmed. I turned back, and they were there, standing just beyond the last flickers of light. A dozen of them now. Closer than ever before. My breath hitched. My fingers tightened around the hunting knife strapped to my belt. But deep down, I knew the truth. A knife wouldn't help me. Nothing would. I don't remember falling asleep. One moment, I was clutching my knife, eyes locked on the darkness beyond the fire. The next, I was waking up to the bone-deep certainty that something was wrong. The fire was dead, the air was too still, and the watchers, they were inside the campsite, not at the tree line, not beyond the fire's reach. They stood just feet away, close enough to touch. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. For the first time, I saw them up close. They weren't just shadows. They had form. Their bodies were stretched too tall, their proportions almost human, but wrong in ways I couldn't comprehend. Their skin, if it was skin, wasn't black but empty, like a space where light couldn't exist. In their faces, they had none. No eyes, no mouths, no features at all. Yet I knew they were looking at me. The nearest figure was only a foot away, close enough that if I reached out, I swallowed a scream and scrambled back, kicking over my backpack in the process. My fingers fumbled for my flashlight, shaking so badly I could barely flick the switch. A weak beam of light cut through the dark, and just like that, they were gone. Not a sound, not a rustling leaf, just empty space where they had been. My pulse thundered in my ears. I swept the flashlight over the camp, then into the trees. Nothing. I was alone. But I knew that wasn't true. They were still there. They had just stepped out of sight. Waiting. I wasn't safe anymore. They had crossed the invisible boundary. The one they had respected before. I didn't have another night in me. I had to get out. The final escape. I ran. There was no plan, no direction, just blind, desperate flight through the trees. I didn't care if I got lost. I didn't care if I had to sleep in the dirt without a tent or fire. I just needed to move. Branches clawed at my arms and face. The underbrush tore at my legs. My breath came in ragged gasps, but I didn't stop. I didn't dare look back. Not until I saw the light. A faint glow through the trees. Artificial. A road. My heart nearly burst with relief. I stumbled toward it, half sobbing, feet catching on roots. Just a few more steps, and then the whispering started. A low murmur, rising all around me, like 100 voices speaking at once. No words. Just sound. I faltered. And the light ahead, it flickered. I took another step. The road wasn't getting closer. The light wasn't real. I turned. The watchers were waiting. A wall of them, blocking every path. No faces. No movement. But I felt it. They were done waiting. The whispers swelled, rising to a deafening roar inside my skull. And then darkness. The park rangers found the campsite first. The remains of a fire. A collapsed tent. Footprints. Too many to count. Then, deeper in the woods, they found the journal. Water damaged. Pages torn, but still readable. The last entry. They're here. Of the hiker, there was no sign. Just the trees, and the silence, and the feeling that, if you looked long enough into the mist, someone might be looking back.